Hi there everybody, and welcome back to my video series on my narcissistic mother. This is part 3. This originally started out as a 2-part, but it got a little lengthy, so we're continuing on from the last part where I was talking about how I had come to the realization that in my adult life, the things that my mother did to me were still affecting me as an adult, and it was affecting my relationships with friends, family, the ability to have a significant other, even my relationship with my child. So I had gone over that a little bit, and now I'd like to continue on and tell you a little bit about how I was able to start to try to overcome some of these issues and finally stand up to my mother a little bit. So about 12 years ago, I met a man that I was in a relationship with for about 6 years, and I really felt like he empowered me to stand up for myself and have a voice. He was quite a large man, and so I felt safe with him. I felt protected in a way. So one day I had just had enough of my mother's comments and digs and, constant just mouthing off. And I sat her down and once again tried to have an adult conversation with her. But this time I was an adult, and she was in my home where I felt like it was my turf and that maybe she would listen a little bit. So I sat her down and I explained to her that I was sick and tired of being belittled by her and the way she always made me feel. I brought up several of the things that she had done to me in the past and how those things felt. The entire time I was talking to her, she sat at the table, moving her lips, almost like you could tell that she was either trying to figure out what she was going to say next or try to cut me off. I'm not sure what it is that she does when she does that, but it was quite annoying, and it made me feel like she wasn't listening to anything I was saying. And then she decided to start crying. And she says, well, I just can't believe you're saying all these things to me. You're just being so hurtful, and I never did any of those things, and why would you say this? And I'm standing there looking at her thinking, you don't remember taking my son from me in the hospital. You don't remember walking away and having him, and I mean, that's just insane. How do you not remember this? So by being able to stand up to her a little bit, I told her that she was not going to be welcome in my home if she continued to behave like this. So after that, about 2 weeks went by and I didn't hear anything from her. And finally, my neighbor and very, very good friend called me, and she said, your mother has left something at my house for you. She had taped a letter to my neighbor's door to me with the envelope that said, please make sure Amanda reads this. And it was just this letter full of more guilt tripping that she had done her whole life. And my mother has become famous for these letters. I'm not the only one that she has sent them to in the past. So my neighbor comes over and we sit down and read this thing together, and she's just shaking her head because she has had her own experience with my mother. At one point, my mom dropped my son off at her house because I wasn't home, and then decided to come back and get him. And my neighbor said, no, you, as far as I'm concerned, have abandoned him. You left him in my care, and I'm going to take care of him until his mother gets home. She knows he's here, and she said she'd be home in just a little while. And my mother literally got into a knockdown, drag-out fight with my neighbor on her front lawn because after she dropped him off and left, she now wanted to come back and just take him again. And she didn't just drop him off. She didn't walk him to the door, say, here he is, make sure he gets inside safely. She pulled up, let him out of the car, and drove away. And my son was only about 6 years old at the time. So that in and of itself is a whole other issue. But that's why my neighbor was very adamant about, no, you left him. We're not doing this. So she's got her own opinions about my mom and, you know, some of the stuff that she has done. But after reading this letter, ladies in my church and other friends of mine, they kept telling me, this is your mom. She's still your mother. She's the only one you're ever going to get. You need to try and make things work. You need to try to be able to forgive her and to, you know, have her in your life, if for no other reason, for your son's sake. So I continued to try to talk to her and have dinners and go to their home. And whenever I had like a Christmas gathering or my son had a birthday party, I would invite her to come. People would not come to my son's birthday or the events that I held if they knew that my mother was going to be there. That's how bad it had become. People would ask me before they RSVP'd to an invitation, is your mother going to be there? So that was very telling. This also happened a lot growing up with my family. I think I might have mentioned in one of the previous videos how people would schedule events and parties around knowing whether or not my mother was going to be able to attend. Oh, she can't be here that weekend? Okay, well, let's do it on that weekend then, because we know that Julie can't come. So that's, you know, that's a hard thing because she is my mom and I do have a lot of these guilty feelings and I want her in my life for my son and for his sake. And, you know, also my son just absolutely adored his grandpa. So it was very difficult for me to try and keep her coming to events and coming to things, knowing that my friends and my son's friends were not going to come because of her. So that was a really difficult time. So after I grew a little bit of a backbone and I was able to stand up to my mother a little bit, what finally broke me, you might be wondering? What was some of those final things that happened that finally pushed me to say enough is enough? Because everybody has their breaking point. Well, the first thing that happened was my father developed cancer and passed away. Now, this has been a little over 5 years ago, and he fought it for 6 months. And at his funeral, somehow she managed to make his funeral all about her. When she got up to speak, it was only supposed to be for about 5 minutes. My son was going to get up and speak. I was supposed to say a few words. But my mother stood up there for over 20 minutes and somehow managed to make herself the center of attention and took all the focus on the fact that my father was the one lying in the casket. After I got home, the very last photo I ever had taken with my father, he was very frail. He was very pale, very weak, just a shell of the man that he used to be. And I'm going to show a quick clip here of him. So as you can see in this picture, neither one of us look very great. I have no makeup on. My hair is greasy. I'd been driving all night because I wanted to see him before he died. And that picture was very, very special to me because it was the very last photo that I will ever have with my father. And I decided to post that to Facebook and share that final memory with people that I know and loved. And so many people were commenting on it. Even my pastor at my church was saying, you know, what a wonderful, sweet memory. What a wonderful blessing that you actually got time to spend with your father and see him one last time, because so many of us don't get that privilege when a loved one passes away. It's too sudden. And then my mother posted something on there about how I was just a horrible, selfish, rude person for for posting this disgusting, awful picture of him. How dare I post a picture of her husband looking like that? I better take it down or else. And I started getting phone calls from people who saw this saying, oh my gosh, what is wrong with your mom? You know, what a sweet picture, and that's your photo to do with what you like. Why can't she just leave you alone? You're grieving, and this is part of your grieving process, is sharing your last memory. So I called her, and I was so angry, and I yelled and I screamed, and I said, you have no right. You have no right to tell me what I can and cannot do with my picture of my father. But she had to be right. And there is a very nasty series of emails that went back and forth between us. And I just, at that point, I said, you know what, Mom? You're going to realize very quickly that you don't really have any friends, because mark my words, in a few months, people are going to stop calling, they're going to stop visiting, and you're going to wonder why. And I'm telling you now, it's because everybody was Dad's friend, not yours. They merely tolerated you because they love Dad. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So either change your behavior, change the way you're treating people, or we really don't have any reason to talk anymore. Quit being so selfish. Quit making everything all about you. I said you couldn't even bury the man without making his funeral all about you. And of course, she denied all of that as well. So then one of the other things that happened was I had a little puppy dog that I loved very, very dearly. She was a little miniature pincher, and I always wanted one. And this dog just meant everything to me. Slept in the bed with me, followed me everywhere, and I'd always wanted a dog that I could do that with. And I have other dogs, but none that really were like that. Well, she died very unexpectedly, and I had to rush her to the vet, where they told me that there was nothing that they could do and that they were going to have to put her to sleep because she was suffering. And I called my mother just before I went in to have them euthanize her, and I told her what was going on, because silly me, thinking I'm devastated, I need my mommy to comfort me, and thinking that she might be able to do that. Boy, I was wrong. I told her what was going on, and she asked me, well, what happened? And I said, I don't know. I had put her out on the porch to use the bathroom. I was getting ready to take them to the dog park to run and play. I came downstairs. One dog came in. She didn't. Found her laying on the rocks, just barely breathing. And she asked me if it was too hot. And I said, no, it's not too hot. It's like 80 degrees outside. That's not too hot. I mean, we live in Houston where it gets to 115, so this is not hot. And she says, wow, well, boy, it was hot here, but oh, we had a cold snap last night, and oh, it just got so cold, and I had to actually go outside and cover up my vegetables, and I had to bring in my plants, and it might snow, and then she goes off on this whole tangent about, everything that's going on with her. Even started talking about her quilting club at one point. And I pulled the phone away from my face, and I was just looking at it, and I started laughing. And my son is sitting there, and he said, what's so funny? And I said, she's talking about the weather where she's at. She's talking about herself. My dog is dying. I am devastated. And she is making it all about herself. At which point my son took the phone out of my hand and hung up on her. And then, unbeknownst to me, proceeded to delete her phone number out of my phone. So that night we buried the dog and didn't sleep for 2 days. cried my eyes out for 2 days, because you have to remember, I just lost my father 3 months prior, and now I've lost this dog that was, you know, like a child to me. And I'm just completely devastated. So my eyes were swollen. I hadn't slept. I've been crying all night, you know, for 2 nights straight. Well, she had not called to check in. She hadn't done anything. And finally, she calls, and I answer the phone. And I said, "What do you want, Mother?" "Well, you don't have to be so snippy," she says. "I was just calling to check and see how Sadie was doing. How's she doing? Is she feeling better?" And I said, "Apparently you weren't listening to me when I was talking to you at the vet's office. No, Mother, she's dead. My dog is dead. We buried her 2 nights ago. But you wouldn't know that because you didn't pay attention. But by all means, tell me more about how the weather is up there where you are." And she started yelling at me for being a little snot. And I said, "You know what, Mom? That's it. We're done." I said, "You're never going to change. You're never going to understand how much you hurt people. And I may be your daughter, but I don't have to let you continue to hurt me for the rest of my life just because we're blood. So this is the last time we will be speaking." And I hung up, and I have not spoken to her since. No letters, no emails, no phone calls. And every so often she'll post something on Facebook. I even had to block her from Facebook and Instagram. And every so often she'll post something that is very derogatory, and, you know, people will see it. But now people just shake their heads and they know, like, she's at it again. For me, in that moment, it was like a light switch got turned off in my soul. A light switch of emotion. That emotional bond between mother and daughter was completely severed. And I feel nothing for her anymore. Nothing at all. And that makes me sad. But it is what it is. Some people will never change. No matter how many times you try and get through to them, no matter how many times you talk to them or reason with them, they are never going to see anything beyond their own little bubble. And everything is always going to be somebody else's fault in a true narcissistic person. So that is what finally ended my relationship with my mother. In the last part of this series that I will post next week, I will talk about how I have moved forward from that and what some things that have happened since that have helped to fill the void in my life of not having a mother. And some of the things that she has missed out on because of me having to cut her out of my life. So stay tuned. Thanks so much again for watching and listening to my story. If you have any comments or questions or something you'd like to get off your chest if you've had similar experiences, please like and comment and subscribe, and look for my video that will be posted next week to round out this series. Thank you so much. Hope you all have a really, really wonderful weekend.